I want to talk to you today about emotionally and verbally abusive relationships. Now, I put those together because they're kind of interrelated and you can't really separate them because a lot of the abuse is verbal. Verbal abuse obviously is emotionally hurtful, and emotional abuse sometimes comes in the form of verbal comments. So they're really crossover and kind of go together. So what are some characteristics of a verbally and emotionally abusive relationship? Well, first of all, I need to say that verbal and emotional abuse is very damaging. It hurts. It hurts the abuse victim because it just absolutely disregards that person's feelings and that person's rights and that person's humanity and that person's individuality. And it basically says, you don't matter. You are worth nothing. That is the message that is given to the abuse victim. So here are some specific types of actions that are actually abusive. The first one is nonverbal body language. You don't have to say anything at all. It's just sneers, stares, contemptuous looks. And those contemptuous looks basically communicate, because communication comes in the form of verbal and nonverbal communication. They communicate disdain. Disdain means to really find something you hate it. You find it disgusting. When you're contemptuous over something, it's just hate. And these looks are just, they're poisonous, and they look at you like you are just absolutely, like the person loathes you. Those kinds of looks are abusive. The next one is continual blame for the relationship problems, even for things that happen that are completely out of the control of the abuse victim. Like, for instance, the abuse victim might be blamed that the abuser lost a job or spent too much money. The abuse victim doesn't even have anything necessarily to do with it and will still get the anger and the blame for that particular thing happening. It is also manipulation. Manipulation is a huge part of abuse. There are people that emotionally manipulate and they use different actions to get what they want. But the manipulation in abuse is a little bit different because even though it can be the same thing, it is for a different purpose. And the purpose is to keep the abuse victim off balance and not knowing what's going on and second guessing and feeling insecure and doubting herself and wondering, what did I do? So the manipulation is mind games and strategies. It can be to get the abuser's way, or it can just be to get the abuse victim to question herself and to wonder why something was done or why she did it or what she did that was wrong. So it's really kind of insidious and difficult to point to, but when it happens, you can feel it. The next one is withholding of affection, approval, money, information, resources, attention, and participation. So it could be anything. That's kind of punishment. Do something wrong or don't do what the abuser wants, or just because the abuser thinks you don't have a right to it. You might make half the money in the relationship. You might make all the money in the relationship or most of the money, but you don't have a right to make choices about the money. You don't have a right to have access to the money. If you don't do what's right and what makes the abuser happy, the money is going to be pulled away, or the affection or attention. So one of those can be like silent treatments. I'm not going to talk to you. I knew a lady who came to me, and she was in a very difficult relationship for a very long time. She didn't know it was abusive. And she described her relationship as this. She said, my husband rarely talks to me. He doesn't ask me how my day was. He doesn't communicate much. And then here was the really important part that helped me understand how abusive her relationship was. She said, when we walk down the hall, he turns his body sideways and walks sideways so he doesn't accidentally touch me or brush up against me. That message right there of withholding any contact and saying, you're so disgusting to me and so I loathe you so much, I don't even want to accidentally touch you, is abuse. That's withholding the entire participation of that abuser in that relationship. And her self-esteem was incredibly low. And when I explained to her that complete withholding of everything in the relationship was abusive, things started to make sense to her, especially how she felt. The next one is name calling. And that's a thing people normally think about with abuse is, okay, you call somebody names and that's abusive. That's just a minor part. The next one is denial. This is important. This one is the one where the abuser denies that his actions were done. And I'm saying his because mostly when we talk about abuse, it's a lot of times it's men because of cultural power in the relationship. That's sometimes given more to men in different cultures, but also it's just, more women come out and talk about abuse, but women can be abusive toward men too. So I don't want you to think that that's not possible. The next one is, like I said, is denial. So the abuser will deny, I didn't do that, I never said that, and the abuse victim knows that it was done, it was said. The abuser will lie about motives. I was just trying to be nice, when the abuse victim knows, okay, that wasn't nice, that hurt, that was mean. And yet the abuser will say, I was just trying to be nice, I was just trying to take care of you, I was just trying to be good, I was just trying to let you know that, I saw what was going on. And yet the abuse victim feels at some point in the relationship that that wasn't the way that it really was. Also, the abuser might pretend, literally pretend, knows that something happened, but pretend that it didn't. And that's that thing that's kind of like gaslighting. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Ingrid Bergman back in the 30s that talks about, it was the man who married the woman, and she had a lot of money, and he wanted to convince her she was crazy so he could take over all of her money. And so he would turn the gas and the lamp down, and it would get kind of dark, and she would say, or make it flicker, and she would say, did the lights flicker? And he'd say, no, they didn't flicker, and I don't know what you're talking about. And then he would move things and tell her, when she would say, I know I put it there, he would say, oh, no, you didn't. Or he would take a picture down and say, don't you remember taking that picture down? And so she began to doubt herself and wonder if she was crazy until someone from the outside stepped in. But that's what happens with abuse, is you begin to wonder, am I crazy? Because here the abuser is denying that things happen, and they happen, but the abuser is so adamant that the victim starts to self-question. The next one is threats about physical violence. It could be toward property, or an animal. Your dog's going to disappear, or you're not going to like what happens to your dog, or mistreating the children as punishment to get back at the victim. If you don't do what I want, then the children are going to suffer. So it might just be mean to the children, might be taking something away, it might be punishing them. It could be damaging property. There was one abusive relationship that a woman told me about where she was going to separate to protect herself. She finally was getting strong enough, and her husband found out, and the threat was, I'm going to take the children away from you and you will never have custody, and took all of the pictures in the house and broke the glass in the frame, and then cut her out of the pictures with a scissor. And the message was basically, I'm going to do this to you if you dare to leave me. And unfortunately, for quite a while longer, she stayed because that threat was so intimidating to her. Then it's also ordering somebody to do things like a child. Adults in their relationship don't have the right to order somebody to do something. A husband doesn't have the right to order his wife with an authoritarian voice, do that, do it now. And she doesn't have the right to order him. You have to make requests and treat each other respectfully. The next one is minimizing, and this involves making light of somebody's accomplishments. The victim might come home and say, I got this job. And the abuser says, big deal, like that's nothing. That's an easy job to get. Anybody could get that job. And all of a sudden the victim's feeling like, oh wow, I thought that was really good. I was really happy. I shouldn't be happy about that. I didn't really do something good. It could also be her interests. It could be like saying, that's stupid. What a dumb thing for you to care about. You care about animals. You care about animals being adopted. It's only a stupid animal. And so it's just that minimizing of anything that the abuse victim does. The next one is intimidation. Intimidation tries to control or frighten somebody with the use of the power in the relationship. So if it's the man in the relationship who takes the control of the money and uses that power, if it's using scripturally, because the Bible says that the man has a right, to ask his wife to submit and that she has to submit, it could be using that power structure as intimidation to say, this is why you have to do what I say. So a pastor or a police officer or a government official could be abusive by using that power in an intimidating way to get people to do what is wanted. The next one is yelling, raging, hostile anger, and passive-aggressive anger when done repeatedly and not taking responsibility. Okay, all of us do some of these things once in a while. I think there are very few people who have never gotten angry and said something mean, who have never gotten angry and raised their voice or yelled or said something they wish that they could take back, or done something in revenge, which you could call punishment. I'm going to get even. I'm mad at this person. That is an abuse, because abuse is the whole thing together. It's the whole use of this continually denying it, not taking responsibility, not caring that you're doing it. If you get angry with somebody and you acknowledge it and apologize, and it doesn't happen repeatedly in a way that's used to control somebody, then that's not abusive anger. It's not good, it's not healthy, but it's not the same as a systemic abusive relationship. The next one is interrogation, and this is also a big one. If you think about a room where you go into the police station because you've done something wrong, and you see it in a movie, and you're sitting there, and there's this light, and the detective is sitting there saying, you did that, didn't you? I know that you went over it. When you're getting into that thing where you're actually using that interrogation, you're saying, tell me what you did. Where were you? Answer yes or no. Only tell me this. And it's literally causing the person to have to answer the way the interrogator is demanding. The interrogator controls the communication and the conversation and tells the person what to answer and how to answer. That's not part of an adult relationship. You don't get to do that. You communicate, and each person gets to communicate in the way that he or she wants to. Okay, the next one is humiliation. And this is through purposeful degrading of the person through jokes and comments, and putting the person down. And it's often done in front of family members, in front of friends. And the purpose, again, is to make the person feel really bad about herself. So the next one has to do with accusations, including attributing feelings, motives, and intentions to the abused. So what this does, and this is a big part of abuse, and this is one of the parts that a lot of people don't get, that's very confusing. And what it is it's saying to the abused, I'm going to tell you why you do things. I'm going to tell you what you're doing. I'm going to tell you what you're thinking. I'm going to tell you what you need. And if you disagree with me or you tell me something different, that is not even a possibility. I know what's going on with you. I know what you should feel. I know what you should think. I know what you need. And basically, so here's an example. Let's say that in the relationship, the abuse victim is the one that's home with the kids, and the abuser is the one that works. And part of her role or responsibility in the relationship is to fix dinner. And so the abuser comes home and dinner's late. And the abuser says to the abuse victim, you purposefully made dinner late tonight. And she says, no, I didn't. I got into traffic. The line was long at the store. Junior had, a problem that I had to take care of. The kids were fighting, and that's why dinner's late. No, you purposefully made dinner late in order to irritate me, in order to make me mad, in order to get me upset, in order to let me know that you don't care. You don't care about me. That's why dinner's late. And there is nothing that the abuse victim can say that will get the abuser to listen to why dinner is late and to not blame her in an abusive way for having dinner late. So that is an example of attributing motives. The next one is devaluing and disrespect using put downs and sarcasm, harsh criticism, rudeness, belittling, and any other way of communicating that contempt and disregard. Then there's ridicule, and ridicule is mocking. Oh, you think you're so great. Oh, you think you're so good. You think you can do so much. Well, you're nothing. You're really nothing. It's that kind of tone of voice. Then purposefully ignoring somebody's requests and needs, saying, I don't care, you asked me to do something, and I purposefully ignore what you asked me to do in a way to let you know you don't matter. So this is all of the characteristics of verbal and emotional abuse. And as you can see, it's a whole lot more than just calling names. So if you don't really understand verbal abuse, if you think after listening to this that you might be in an abusive relationship, I would really, really, really encourage you to get more information, to understand what it is, and to be able to recognize it, because there's a lot of things that can be done to strengthen you within an abusive relationship, but you aren't going to be able to do that if you don't first recognize that you're actually in an abusive relationship. So thank you for watching this video on Change My Relationship.